A Long Walk to Water, Chapter 14, The Story So Far. As the drilling crew works hard, Naya thinks it's funny that they have to keep getting water from the pond to find water. It takes a year and a half of walking, but with Selva leading the way, he and the other boys finally arrive in Kenya. Southern Sudan, 2009. For 3 days, the air around Naya's home was filled with the sound of the drill. On the third afternoon, Naya joined the other children gathered around the drill site. The grown-ups rose from their work pounding rocks and drifted over too. The workers seemed excited. They were moving quickly as their leader called out orders, then whoosh! A spray of water shot high into the air. This wasn't the water that the workers had been piping into the borehole. This was new water, water that was coming out of the hole. Everyone cheered at the sight of the water. They all laughed at the two workers who had been operating the drill. They were drenched, their clothes completely soaked through. A woman in the crowd began singing a song of celebration. Naya clapped her hands along with all the other children. But as she watched the water spraying out of the borehole, Naya frowned. The water wasn't clear. It was brown and heavy looking. It was full of mud. Ifo Refugee Camp, Kenya, 1992 to 1996. Salva was now 22 years old. For the past 5 years, he had been living in refugee camps in northern Kenya, first at the Kakuma camp, then at Ifo. Kakuma had been a dreadful place. Isolated in the middle of a dry, windy desert, tall fences of barbed wire enclosed the camp. No one was allowed to leave unless you were leaving for good. It felt almost like a prison. 70,000 people lived at Kakuma. Some said it was more like 80 or 90,000. There were some families who had managed to escape together, but again, as in Ethiopia, most of the refugees were orphaned boys and young men. The local people who lived in the area did not like having the refugee camp there. They would often break in and steal from the refugees. Sometimes fights would break out, and people were hurt or killed. After 2 years of misery at Kakuma, Salva decided to leave the camp. He had heard of another refugee camp far to the south and west, where he hoped things would be better. Once again, Salva and a small group of other young men walked for months, but when they reached the camp at Ifo, they found that things were no different than at Kakuma. Everyone was always hungry, and there was never enough food. Many were sick or injured from their long, terrible journeys to reach the camp. The few medical volunteers could not care for everyone who needed help. Salva felt fortunate that at least he was in good health. He wanted desperately to work, to make a little money that he could use to buy extra food. He even dreamed of saving some money so he could one day leave the camp and continue his education somehow. But there was no work. There was nothing to do but wait. Wait for the next ration of food. Wait for news of the world outside the camp. The days were long and empty. They stretched into weeks, then months, then years. It was hard to keep hope alive when there was so little to feed it. A rumor was spreading throughout the camp. It began like a whisper, but soon Selva felt as if it were a roar in his ears. He could think of nothing else. America, the United States. The rumor was that about 3,000 boys and young men from the refugee camps would be chosen to go live in America. Selva could not believe it. How could it be true? How would they get there? Where would they live? It was impossible. But as the days went by, he learned that the rumor was true. They only want healthy people. If you're sick, you won't be chosen. They won't take you if you have ever been a soldier with the rebels. Only orphans are being chosen. If you have any family left, you have to stay here. Weeks passed, then months. One day a notice was posted at the camp's administration tent. It was a list of names. If your name was on the list, it meant that you had made it to the next step, the interview. After the interview, you would go to America. Selva's name was not on the list, nor was it on the next list, or the one after that. Many of the boys being chosen were younger than Selva. Perhaps America doesn't want anyone too old, he thought. Each time a list was posted, Selva's heart would pound as he read the names. He tried not to lose hope. At the same time, he tried not to hope too much. Sometimes he felt he was being torn in two by the hoping and the not hoping. One windy afternoon, a man Selva knew came rushing to find him. Selva, come quickly. Your name is on the list today. Selva leapt to his feet and was running even before his friend had finished speaking. When he drew near the administration tent, he slowed down and tried to catch his breath. He might be wrong. It might be another person named Selva. I won't look too soon. From far away, I might see a name that looks like mine, and I need to be sure. Selva shouldered his way through the crowd until he was standing in front of the list. He raised his head slowly and began reading through the names. There it was. Selva Doot, Rochester, New York. Selva was going to New York. He was going to America.